For decades, America has tried to combat the harms of drug use primarily through banning drugs and incarcerating people who use them. But this has caused a violent underground market for drugs, increasing crime in our communities. It's caused contaminated substances, increasing overdose deaths. And it's caused incarceration to skyrocket, destabilizing families. What we're doing isn't working. Crime, death, and broken families are the collateral damage of using the criminal justice system to address the public health issue of drugs. If you're looking for a better path forward, you're in the right place. What if we changed our drug policies to prioritize life, health, harm reduction, and thriving? And what if it benefited all of us? Our criminal justice approach to drugs had a beginning, and it can have an end. Join us on the journey to end it for good. I'm Christina Dent, your host, and if you're new here, End It for Good is a nonprofit started in 2019, based in Mississippi, that invites people to support approaches to drugs that prioritize life and the opportunity to thrive. This podcast is one of the ways we do that. You can head over to episode 34 to hear my story as a conservative Christian foster mom, changing my own mind on the best path forward with drugs, and then come on back and dive in deeper. I didn't change my mind overnight, and most other people don't either. We all need time to learn, think, ask questions, and explore. Whatever your perspective is, I'm glad you're here. Let's journey together. Welcome back to the End It for Good podcast. I'm Christina Dent, your host. I'm really excited today to have my friend Esther Pilgrim on the podcast. She is a registered nurse who works in a crisis center that specializes in mental health and detox. But she, for the purpose of this episode, more importantly, is a mother who has walked with her daughter through many years of addiction and just her own heart and mind change about how she approaches that with her daughter, which is why we're doing this episode together, because we wanted to shift back to that kind of family impact and the tools that families can use to maybe have healthier relationships with their loved ones while they're struggling, even though it's such a difficult experience for families. And I just have loved getting to know Esther and hearing her heart and just her openness to saying, hey, you know what? I've learned some things, and I realize I did some things in the beginning that were not helpful, and I'm gonna change, and that's okay. We're all just human. We're all doing the best that we can. And so we want to offer people a chance to learn and grow and to have grace for themselves that, hey, you know what? We're all just doing the best we can. And sometimes what we did 5 years ago might not have been the most helpful thing. And that was the best that we knew at the time. And we can have grace for that. So Esther, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. I just am excited with the opportunity to get to share and hopefully encourage other people in their journey. Um, that gives me purpose and empowers me as well to continue my journey.
I love that. So take us back to the beginning. When did addiction first enter your family story?
So I'll say in the beginning, I probably was real naive and didn't even realize what was happening. Um, I grew up with people that were involved with amphetamines. And so, I'm 61, so that's way back when I was probably like 19, 20. And with amphetamines, I will say I didn't see like negative. I saw them working, having fun, just lots of energy. And so I didn't see like a negative, except that drug dealers would came to the house one time with guns, and that freaked me out. And so I ended up joining the military to get away because I didn't want to continue in that. So fast forward, then when my daughter, she was a teen mom. My ex and I also served in the military and both got deployed and for the Gulf War. And so when we came back, Heather was not the same like bouncy, happy child. And so my mother-in-law had shared that while we were gone, she would have like nights where she couldn't sleep. She cried a lot, those type things. And so we put her in counseling and did things. But, again, back then it wasn't as normal, so to speak. People didn't talk about it, or we really didn't even know what to do. But like you said, I look back and give us grace because we did the best we could do at the time. She also lost a friend in second grade. Like, she had a lot that died unexpectedly, so she had a lot of traumas. And so um, when she was in high school, I believe that's when she started experimenting and self-medicating. And I'll just share this story that she had told me one time. She had ran into a ditch or hit a deer. That's what it was. She'd hit a baby deer, and because she didn't bring the vehicle home for a few days. And so when she told me the deer story, of course, I'm like, oh my God, you could have died. People have died. And so years later, I found out that was not true. She had ran off the road into a ditch, and that's what tore the truck up. And I believe that's when, she had developed an issue, and I was naive, didn't see it, maybe denial too. And it wasn't, honestly, I'm not even really sure when I accepted it or realized it was actually happening. And I will go back and say, going back to my teen years, I tried the amphetamines because I was working two and three jobs, but I never got addicted. Like, I stopped, decided to join the military, whereas my cousins got addicted. They continue to do it, and they're fine with me talking about it because they're, sober now as well for almost 20 years. But my point is, when it did happen and when I did realize, those are the type of things that I had to um, learn, because it didn't happen to me. And so I thought, well, you're just not, don't have enough willpower, because I didn't do that. I didn't have that problem. Um, and so with that came that self righteousness and that lack of understanding. So again, during the course of these years, and it was years, and it's still, even today, I realized that because I loved my daughter so much and she is such a great person, that I wanted to better understand. And in the course of watching her go through rehab and then what we would call failing, and that's how it felt initially, it would break my heart to watch her struggling and hurting. And so that motivated me to start trying to better understand. And even today, I still have struggles going back and forth, because I was even telling my daughter this morning that I can only work so many days in a row because I start getting irritated, because it's a lot to cope with, and then to see the same people come back and come back and come back. And that's even discouraging for me as a nurse. And so certainly you can imagine it discouraging as a mother.
Yeah.
I do remember I knew she had a problem before this, but I specifically remember a night that she woke me up, well, actually morning, like 2 and 3 in the morning, and said, Mama, I've got to go to the hospital. Uh, I'm not good. I'm not right. And I would later find out, that she was suicidal, having thoughts, because feeling so defeated. And so, again, I can't really pinpoint when it started, but again, and for the sake of other people, denial is real. I think it's a grief process that you go through even when it first starts. Denial, then you start trying to negotiate with God and negotiate with the addiction and certain things, and in your naivety, you think that might work, but it doesn't, and we have to grow with it, whether you want to or not. And that's part of the process, even as a mom too. Like, I would get angry, I didn't want to be in this, like, and again, that self-righteousness, like, well, I joined the army, I've done everything right, why is this happening to me? And I had that conversation with God the other day, reminding me that we can't even say why. We have to say why not, and choose to embrace the journey, whether you want to or not. Because I know some
Yeah.
days you don't, but for sanity purposes, for yourself, uh, you have to do that, or it's gonna break your heart.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's helpful to hear you talk about just all of that. It's like its own. I love that grief process that you mentioned.
Mhm.
It's kind of this reckoning with life as it really is, and something that you don't want to deal with. You don't want to be in your family. You don't want your loved one to deal with. Um, and it's such a frustrating and heartbreaking uh, complex health crisis for someone to deal with that is so involved with family and relationships and all of those things. I hope for parents that are listening that they just hear um, that compassion and empathy, that it's just so hard, and it's not a journey that anybody wants to walk.
Mm-mm.
um, and there is so much wrapped up in that, whether it's feelings of guilt over why is this happening to me, is this my fault, is this or shame, what will the community think of me and
Right.
our family if they know, or grief, this is not the future that I wanted for my child.
Mhm.
So much is just wrapped up in that, and I just love how you have just shared so vulnerably about that. So how did you when you first began to realize that she has a problem, there is an addiction here, how did you understand addiction? You've talked a little bit about like, well, I didn't become addicted, and I, experimented some.
Mhm.
And what was your response to her in those early days?
Uh, Going back to, I think, um, that, like, as you were saying, that was one of those things that, woo, I wish I could change that. The fact that I didn't understand it, I didn't understand because I felt like I had been super mom and, tried to love her through to the 10th power. And again, to bring God up, that's just me. I had, he pointed out to me that, look, I love my kids too, and look how some of them have turned out. And I share that because that was comforting to me, very comforting. And so that helped me move forward as well, is just realizing, you can do your best. And then, as you said too, you look at how people do judge. I've I've had people say some really hard things to me. I've had people, and I fell for it too, the tough love. But then when I started doing research, I'm a research person. And so when I started looking into the tough love, that's not really productive. We don't see better success rates with, letting people hit the rock bottom and tough love. And now you do have to have boundaries, and that's a whole different ball game. And I wasn't good at that either. Initially, I'm a soft mom, and let me say on that note too that, especially, and I don't know what the statistics are for single parents of addicts, but that's another, struggle for the parent that is single, uh, just carrying the burden by yourself financially, then taking the criticism of, if the ex is involved, they're usually critical. And so you got to deal with that as well. Like I said, the financial aspect as well, especially once they start getting into, if they do, and most of them do, if they stay in addiction, the legal aspects, they usually get arrested. That's a whole nother conversation, about how punitive Mississippi is, how many legal fees you pay. Like, literally, I was thinking the other day, well, I have a granddaughter too that's struggling now, but I literally could have my kitchen redone, all my floors, my bathrooms, with just the money I've spent on legal fees and rehab. And I have an older house, so I could really spiff it up. But But that's a choice. And, and I know some parents can't afford that. And again, just I'm thankful as a nurse because I could afford to do some things. And in this journey, I've seen that like one in Mississippi, the math is about 1 out of 8 grandparents have their grandchildren to raise, and the majority of them are in poverty. So even in the journey, I've had to be grateful, or I choose to be grateful and thankful because I realize I am blessed compared to a lot of other grandparents and parents, even being single.
So, was there a moment when you realized that your assumptions about addiction might be incomplete? Where was the beginning of that? Like, wait a second. What I grew up thinking, this kind of to use your term, this self-righteous way of thinking, like, just get it together, it wasn't going to be the thing. Was there a moment that you can remember that began that process of change?
I don't think it was overnight, like a aha epiphany. I think it was gradual, and maybe some because of how people treated me or bullied my daughter. Because I'm very protective. And like I said, she's an awesome person, one of my favorite people. She has an awesome heart. So that probably is what provoked me to start changing my thinking, is because I saw how other people were thinking and treating my daughter, and I didn't like it. And so I started doing research, and that was very humbling. Even preparing to talk to people and at work, it provokes me again to try to learn and see what addicts go through and how painful. Well, just watching her. Once we were honest about it, and once I realized that she was an addict, and this wasn't going to be an overnight fix. Like, that's another thing too. Like when they first go to rehab, you have that fantasy like they're going to come home fixed, when you don't know better, that the majority of people don't. They have to end up going, unfortunately, several times because it is such a brain hijacking. I like that word. The brain literally gets hijacked. And just like a hijacked plane is not in the pilot's control, that's how it is for that person that's struggling with addiction. Their brain is literally hijacked out of their control, um, until they are able to take control of the flight again. Um, so it
Mm.
was gradual. It was definitely gradual. And by being willing to educate myself and being willing to, um, as you said, exercise mercy and compassion.
What was the process like? You mentioned it a little bit, kind of the criminal justice piece of this. So for some people, they might have a loved one who struggles with addiction and the criminal justice system's never involved. Now, that experience can still be incredibly painful, incredibly chaotic, even without that additional component of
Right.
criminal justice involvement. But if people get caught in the criminal justice system, talk a little bit about your experience of kind of that, hoping that would be a solution for her, and then what you saw as that kind of played out.
Okay, so she did end up getting arrested for possession, and ended up getting sentenced. Initially, they tried the drug court program. So, as a nurse, I have issue with the drug court program that I never even knew existed, but learned it existed because, again, because of my daughter. But they have no medical staff involved. So it's strictly law enforcement, people that are on the team, but no medical. And I have issue with that because it is a disease. And as I've said to people in law enforcement, how can you say it's a disease, but you don't have a doctor or a nurse on your team? We don't send other people with diseases to jail, or prison. So I feel like you need to make up your mind what it is. If it is a disease, then treat it as such. But so when she got involved with that, so drug court here, and I know some of them are different, but You have to call in every day at 9 o'clock, and then you have to be able to drop everything and go drug test. And my favorite was they come at 2 and 3 in the morning and wake everybody in the house up just to do make sure she's in the house.
Mm.
And so then they do a drug test too as well at 2 or 3 in the morning. So everybody's good and wide awake by the time they leave. And God help you if you got to get up for work the next morning and do critical thinking.
So, real
So,
quick, for people who might not know what drug court is, so if you get arrested for some drug related um, offense, or if it's an offense maybe that was driven by an addiction, so maybe it was theft, but the underlying cause was you were trying to get enough money to buy the drugs to feed your addiction. That there are in Mississippi, I think actually all counties now have them where they can divert you to drug court. Different drug courts work differently, but all of them are programs that you pay to be in. So participants have to pay to be part of drug court. There's no guarantee that you will graduate from it. You can fail out of it if you fail a drug test. Different judges approach that different ways. Sometimes it's, you know, they give you multiple chances. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes there can be really stiff penalties if you don't make it through drug court. I've heard of drug courts in some places that the person going into drug court has to plead to the highest penalty of their crime in order to get into drug court. And so if they fail out of it, they are automatically getting the maximum sentence for
mhm,
their crime. So I've actually heard of more and more people saying, I don't want to go to drug court. The risk is too high. So here's this tool, and I think your point is well made, that we've got we're recognizing that just putting people in jail is not solving the problem. So we have come up with drug court, but to recognize in part that this is a health issue and we need to deal with what it is, but there are no health providers on the team. It's a court program. It is not a health program. And so we've had lots of challenges. Other states have this too, related to um, you know, judges telling people they can't take medication while they're in
mhm.
drug court. Well, that should be between you and your doctor, not between
Right.
a judge and a participant. Judges are not medical providers. They don't know what people need for whether it's addiction medication or psychiatric medication or whatever it might be. So I think those are really good points. Drug court can be really helpful for people, but there are some significant challenges with it. And it is kind of this interesting mix of these different perspectives of how we think about addiction. Like this law enforcement perspective we've had for decades and decades, this emerging health perspective that we have, trying to mash those together, but we are missing a critical component, which is where's a nurse, where is a doctor, where is somebody who has the medical training to understand the addiction and to know what it is that a person needs to be able to have their best opportunity to thrive. So just a quick pause there on drug court to give people a little bit of an idea. It can be really helpful. Some people are huge fans of drug court, and it can be done really well and really in a really healthy way. It can also be done really poorly. So just because somebody
Mhm.
is in a drug court or has an opportunity, it doesn't mean that drug court is going to be a healthy thing. It doesn't mean it's being run by best practice standards. There's all kinds of leeway in most drug courts to kind of run them however the judge or who's running that drug court wants to run them. Some of them really do their research into best practices and run it according to best practices, and some of them don't, and they are running it based on whatever their understanding of addiction is, which may or may not be aligned with anything that's evidence based. So, um, back into your story, Esther.
Right. Well, and I do think that that's one of the drawbacks, with law enforcement because they look at it from a law perspective. And I do know I did call and try to anonymously get some information, and actually, the person that I talked to got offended and was real defensive. I've also tried to find statistics on the success of the drug court program and couldn't even locate those. And so again, as I get into digging, and I'm a numbers person because I think that helps paint the picture of the reality, I get frustrated when I can't find it. And I'm a taxpayer for these programs. I want to know what the success rate is. And another point you were making brought to my memory is, and I've had this conversation with the DA's office, is it's kind of cherry picked in the drug court program. First of all, as you said, and it's true, you have to pay a fee. You have to have a vehicle or a means to get there. A lot of addicts have lost everything, so they don't have those kind of availabilities, even if they wanted to participate. And then a point that you made as well that I think is true with my daughter, if I recall correctly, because she did do the drug court program and found it, she has severe anxiety. So which even for me, that waking up every day at 9 o'clock and calling, and then God forbid I have a flat tire or my car don't start. If I don't get there, it's punitive. There's no, okay, so, no, you go to jail for some weeks. And so I don't agree with that. That's not in my mind. And what I see working with addicts, that's not productive. In fact, that just, some will push them backwards, trigger a relapse. So I don't agree with that. But there is the fee, the car. So again, that kind of limits who can even participate, which to me is not fair. I don't like things that leave out the poor person, because I grew up poor and I would have been one of those I had to go to prison. But even in my daughter's case, because as you said, and I had forgot about that, because she did participate in the program, then when she said, I can't do it, I'd rather just go to prison, this is too much, then she got the maximum. She got the full 5 years here in Mississippi.
Yeah, it is. I think anytime that we think there is a silver bullet, there's never a silver bullet. None of the solutions that we are presenting as an organization are silver bullets. There are no silver bullets. There's no perfect solution. Drug court is not a silver bullet. And yes, people do graduate from it. Yes, it can be a life transforming experience for people. But for all of those people who do graduate from it, there are many more people who don't. And where are they? And that's kind of a question I hope that we can sit with too. Is it can be really detrimental for the people who don't graduate from it. And I can certainly hear somebody saying, well, they took the risk and they couldn't make it. And so, but again, I would ask the question, is that helping them? Is
Mm-hmm.
that then helping them with their addiction to say, well, now she's going to be sitting in prison for 5 years? Like, who is that helping? It's definitely not helping her. I don't think it's helping taxpayers. It's not helping, the prison system, which is already, we have more people in prison than any other state here in Mississippi. Esther and I both happen to be in Mississippi. Um, and so we've got to kind of reckon with those broader questions. We can't I think of it kind of like it's very short sighted to just say, well, too bad, their fault.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all of us have to live with the outcome of that. We all have to live with the repercussions of that, which is more people in prison, more money going that direction rather than helping them recover. And I don't think most people, when they hear about drug court, I don't think they realize what it actually entails to be part of a drug court program. I
Right.
don't think they realize this is like every day you're calling in
Every day.
and you better be able to get there. You have a certain period of time that you're able to get to the drug testing facility to take your randomized drug test if you're called in that morning. And the amount of just anxiety that produces. How many how many times have I gotten in my car and like something's wrong? It doesn't start. Like
Mm-hmm.
last year we had multiple vehicles that were like just randomly. It's like, why won't this? And if you're part of a drug court, those programs can be 3 years long that you're calling
Right.
in every morning as part of that. And some of them you might have to call in less times as time goes on. But the it is an incredibly stressful experience, even for people for whom they would say this worked for me. Nobody will tell you it was not an incredibly stressful experience because of just this kind of razor thin line that you have to walk, and you've got to be able to do the things and be at the places. And if you don't have a job that's flexible to allow you to just
Right.
run out the door if you get called in, um, all of those things are really difficult, and especially as people are trying to get their lives back together. And to find a job and things like that. Some employers are going to work with you, and some are going to be like, "This is too much. I can't have an employee randomly running out the door in the middle of the morning to
Hmm.
go, once or twice or 3 times a week or however much they get called in." So let's talk about your job a little bit and kind of from that perspective, what you have seen. What do you think? So you're working with people, you're seeing people all the time that are struggling with addiction, struggling with mental health issues. What do you think the public doesn't understand that you've seen in that environment, not just with the person you love so much, your daughter, but just with so many people's loved ones that are coming in? What are some of the things you think we've gotten wrong, and we could you could help us see behind the curtain a little bit and understand better?
I would say first that the majority of people that struggle with addiction have mental health issues or a component to it as well. Second, I would say, and myself was included, that how painful detox is physically, not even just emotionally. And again, my daughter has taught me a lot and helped me to be such a better nurse in, serving that population, because I ignorantly would say, and again, just based on what I heard and saw, I was like, so withdrawal, like the bone and muscle pain, is probably like when you have the flu and it's just so bad you don't want to get out of bed, you're hurting. And she's like, Mama, no, it's like your bones are twisting. And so I couldn't even fathom that. Now I'm like, I can't even imagine that. So it has made me more proactive. And in fact, because of my daughter and my relationship with her, I've recognized that some of the nurses, even where I work, don't give comfort meds unless the patient asks for them. Well, we're going to stop that. We're just going to start giving them whether they ask for them or not, because not everybody is going to tell you they're hurting. They'll just suffer silently. And so I believe that's one way we can be proactive in the detox field, is just give it to them. Don't make them ask for it. We already know they're hurting. I think the public, again, doesn't realize, and nurses don't even realize until they've been in it a while, how bad detox hurts. And certainly, again, because of my love for my daughter, that has made me more sensitive and made me a better nurse. She teaches me all the time. If I have a question about something, I'll say, have you heard of this, or what's this? And so, kudos to her. I'm sure my patients would want to hug her because they get medicated well, thanks to her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I love that. I think that's I've heard the same thing from other nurses that there's a lot of stigma towards addiction
Hmm.
in the medical field. And so whether you're a doctor who's working in an ER and you've seen people come in trying to get opioids and that has kind of jaded your heart for the suffering that's underneath that,
Right.
um, or nurses who are working on floors where there might be people who are struggling with addiction, and that there's for so many people who have experienced a substance use disorder, there's a lot of generally a lot of negative experiences that have happened in healthcare settings for them.
Right.
So I love that you're continuing to educate yourself on that and the people that you're working with also. So if there's a mother listening today who is feeling, or a father, who's feeling hopeless about their child and their struggle with addiction, what would you want them to hear?
I would say to first just educate, look things up, try to get information so you understand the addiction better. Second, either join like some type of support group. I didn't do that. I sought out just therapy. Um, my concern with, and this is just me, for support groups, I didn't want to get and hear too much negative. I felt like my burden was already heavy enough. And going back to, I ended up, getting custody of my grandchildren in an effort to try to tough love my daughter into sobriety. And so that backfired because that just took away that responsibility for one, and that was a motivation to do better, even in the struggle. So I had that plus working and, my own grief. And so I ended up just going for counseling, like therapy intermittently, just to have someone to bounce it off with and get productive things to do. I am big on coping skills and mindfulness. That works for me. Everybody has to find their own coping skill that works for them. Personally, and not tooting my own horn, but I do think that parents of addicts are amazing people. Again, I believe God chooses who He's going to put in a position to work with His children. And, ultimately, my daughter's His daughter, and I'm just gifted with, helping. And so I just want to encourage people that, that is it's a tough road, but it can be a blessed road. And surrounding yourself with positivity. I do listen to positive music. Caleb is my favorite. I listen to that. And because I know I need that positive, uplifting for my spirit so that I can be a funnel and give to other people. So certainly just fill your own tank. Now, one thing that I've recognized recently that I've failed in is I probably don't do enough things for myself. Like I dished out money for this and that and rehab and, all that. But I haven't done enough for my own self care. And so that's something in 2026 I'm going to work on, is like doing some things for me, for my own self for me.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. So my next question was going to be kind of what supports did you wish you had earlier in your daughter's struggle? It sounds like education, trying to understand what's happening instead of just responding to whatever you see in front of you, but trying to understand this bigger picture of what your family is now involved with when an addiction is present. Um, Getting involved in some sort of support group. And my guess is that families, the hope is always this is just, tomorrow this is going to end. I don't need a support group.
Right.
Like, this is just, if I just do the right thing, if we just do the right, like, maybe just I won't have to go down that path that feels like this kind of, I'm giving in. I'm like admitting that we're on this journey,
Yes.
and that can be a really hard thing for for parents and family members to make that mental switch of acknowledging this is a journey that we're going to be on, and we might need some support along the way for that. And again, if you are listening and looking for how do I engage with my loved one, encourage you to check out Invitation to Change. It's a program, and also Craft. And there are in some places you can find in-person meetings or support groups that use those programs. And otherwise, there are online versions that you can do as well. But both of them teach you communication skills and interaction skills and knowledge and boundaries so that you can have a relationship with your loved one that is healthy, while not enabling them
Right.
in their addiction. But it's not just a let them go hit rock bottom and kind of disconnect yourself from them. And so I love that. Talk a little bit, and we passed over this, but I know for some families there is this dream of maybe if the police come and just scare them, like maybe if they just get an arrest and they spend a few days in jail, this is just going to solve this. Like maybe it's like a scared straight thing. Like maybe this is the thing that they need. And for some parents, that will be calling the police on their children. And not to say there's, certainly if you're in physical danger and things like that,
Right.
there's a reason for that. But for some parents, just that like reaching for anything that they think might be the thing that is like going to make them. I think it's very much tied up in this kind of rock bottom mindset of how
Mhm.
can we get them to hit that rock bottom, to wake up, to not engage in this destructive behavior anymore. And I know that you felt that way about kind of the criminal justice system on the front end of maybe this is going to be the thing that's just going to help her. Was that your experience?
I think we all hope that certain things will just trigger that sobriety. Like for me, I think when, taking custody of her kids because she is such an awesome mom, that was going to do it and just wake her up, so to speak. And I'm sure some people will call the police thinking that will be the wake up. There's no way to know. Um, I don't have a good experience with the police being involved. We do everything now to avoid them. We even change out cars. I'm thinking about taking bumper stickers off so they won't recognize the vehicle, those kind of things, because it's been so negative. And and if I may, I did want to share too that going back to the criminal system, when you send someone to prison or to jail, you've got children involved. So now you took away their mother, sent her to prison. I have two little girls that are left behind, and now one is an addict herself, and the other one is a young mother, a teenage mom, and not blaming, but it certainly contributed to, the pain that those children are in. So that's another issue I have with, being so punitive. And as you said, we're both from Mississippi, and Mississippi, right now, we're the leader in people being incarcerated, and we're almost double the average in the United States, almost double. Then add to it, the recidivism rate is super high. I want to say 75, 80%. So again, I'll bring up as a taxpayer, obviously all that money that's being spent is not working. And the majority, I'd say 2/3 of the people in prison is related to drugs or drug activity. Those are things we really seriously need to look at. If nothing else, it's not working. Whether you care about addicts or you don't care, just from a perspective of being a state, we got to want better for our people. And, that's where my passion comes from now in trying to push for change is because we are so, so sick as a state in how we are treating our people and with this punitive system that's not working. It's not healthy emotionally. We're damaging families, we're damaging children, which perpetuates even more in the future. Um, that's kind of a pet peeve, you could say. And again, why I'm passionate and going places and being a voice, because we got to have change.
How has loving your daughter through these years of addiction changed you as a person?
My daughter, when she came home, and it's okay with sharing this, came home with night terrors. Now she has to take medicine because she screams out in her sleep, wakes up the house. She would clench her fist so tight that she has carpal tunnel, and came home with a horrible fungal infection. She couldn't get medical treatment, and she came home underweight. My family, we are healthy people. And so, to see her come out emaciated because I picked her up broke my heart. And it was all I could do not to cry. And she cried as we were pulling away. And let me say why she cried. She cried because she was leaving people in hell. And that's what she said. I'm crying for the people that are still there and in hell.
Hmm. Oh,
One crying for herself.
yeah. Yeah, that's so sad, so heartbreaking. And I know you have an even deeper knowledge of that just from your own time working in a prison and seeing up close what most of us are shielded from. We tend to think of prisons as, it's a locked up, tight environment, but really, uh, prisons, I think there's been some good movement, at least here in Mississippi, over the last couple of years. But prison is a really awful place, and with really terrible things that happen to people there. And so we should think carefully about who is it that we want to expose to that level of trauma and abuse and exploitation in many ways. We've covered that in other podcast episodes, and
Mhm.
um, that's yeah, we need to be thoughtful about that, because when people come back out of that environment, they have to live with what they experienced there.
Right.
And we know that all of that trauma is going to work out, it's going to impact them for the rest of their lives in other ways, and it might make it more difficult for them to get back in a healthy, thriving life, and work a job and be there for their kids and whatever else that we want for them when they come out of prison. I think we've always got to be thinking about, is the action we're taking on the back end going to get us more towards the outcomes we want, or is it actually not? And to be honest about whether or not we wish it had particular impact, what's the impact that it actually has on people and their lives and families. So um, what is one action, as we wrap up, that you hope a family member would take today with their loved one who's still struggling with addiction? I know your daughter has been on a long journey, is now doing well. Um, what's something that you hope for them? They're listening, this mom or dad, maybe it's a brother or sister, maybe it's a best friend who has watched someone they love struggle with addiction. What is one thing you hope that they do today?
Don't hesitate to get them into treatment if they need treatment. I think, as you said earlier, and that was true, we're in denial, we're embarrassed, people bully. So we hesitate to get our loved one into treatment. And and I know sometimes they got to be ready too, but sometimes they just need a little push as well, and to know that you're going to be there for them. I'm very proud that that we have a crisis center in our nearby, but not everybody has that. And I know that when my daughter didn't have insurance, that was a roadblock as well. They're trying to find somewhere to take her. Thankfully, though, there are, places you can call. You can call like sober livings. I would just call anybody, anything you think is connected to recovery, because a lot of these places, former or I don't know if they even say former, but they're sober, they're in recovery. So a lot of people that are working at these places are recovered, and I've just been amazed at the heart of people that have recovered, how much they want to help other people. And on that note, I'll say I know when my daughter was in prison, there was one time I don't know if I had COVID or I had the flu, but I couldn't even literally get out of bed. And that's rare for me. But one of her friends in recovery saw something I posted on Facebook and called me, and she's like, "What do you need? I'll go to the store." Like, it was 7 o'clock in the morning. And she got up out of bed and went. None of my other friends, none of my always been sober friends volunteered, but this recovering addict did. And I haven't forgot that. Like, she was that sensitive to my suffering.
Mm,
And that meant a lot to me. And so, and on that note, I mean, I think that's what the beauty is in the recovered addicts. You'll see an amazing heart in them, very compassionate, very driven to reach back and help the next person. And so, what I would say is just reach out, find somebody. There's things on Facebook. You can reach out to me. I mean, I will try to do my best, as will my daughter, to get you connected to someone. But help get them into detox and recovery. And even I have to tell myself and remind myself, even with my patients, is that, and I tell them, never quit, never give up. Because sometimes they'll come in and they're like, "I'm so embarrassed. I know, I'm back again." And I'll just, I'll tell them, "Well, don't give up. I'm glad you're here and you're not in the obituary." So, and that's the truth. As long as they're alive, we got a chance. We
yeah.
got hope. We got hope.
Yes, love it. Thank you so much, Esther. Anything else you want to share as we wrap up?
Just don't give up. Like, keep on keeping on. We got this one day at a time.
Thanks so much. And thanks for joining us on the End It for Good podcast. We'll see you next time. And in the meantime, reach out to someone. Maybe it's someone struggling with addiction. Maybe it's somebody who's got COVID or something like that. But bearing each other's burdens. I love that, of just seeing where is their suffering. And it is never wrong to reach out and let someone know that you empathize with them, you're there for them and their suffering. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the End It for Good podcast. So how do we shift our drug policies from a criminal justice approach to a public health approach? By inviting one person at a time to change their mind. Changed minds are the catalyst to changed laws. But many people are only willing to have this conversation when they're invited to by someone that they trust. That's you. Invite your friends, coworkers, other people in your circle of influence to consider a better way. At End It for Good, our hope is that people who hear will become people who tell. Start a conversation and join the movement to end it for good.